Please welcome Nathan Ramirez.
So I was told I have 10 minutes to go and explain my poem, and oh yeah, of course, he already introduced me. I'm a junior here at LHS, obviously. And before I begin my very rushed poem, as suggested by my peers, I'd like to take a quick moment to explain what my poem is about, and as Victoria Ivanov said yesterday, my niche motivation, for it is enigmatic akin to the human mind, that of which it speaks of. So, by show of hands, how many people are familiar with Augustine of Hippo, or his book, Confessions, which I actually have right here? Raise of hands. One person. Wow. Wow, tough crowd. Nobody's laughing at the one, just the fact that only one person raised their hand. Thank you. Okay. So, and anybody interested in philosophy? Show of hands. Okay, more hands. Thank you. So, this piece is heavily inspired by this piece right here, as well as other philosophical, metaphysical, theological writings, such as that of Thomas Aquinas, Socrates, etc. I express it in a series of haikus, some of which connected and some stand alone. And even the most basic of philosophical and metaphysical questions can lead to the deepest of introspection. To what extent are our thoughts our own? To what extent are you and not your surroundings? To what extent are we the fool? For the one to call oneself wise is to call oneself the greatest of fools. To what extent are you your mind and your body? This series of metaphysical introspection questions that. The feeling of being torn into as a result of existential and theological knowing, the state of puzzlement, doubt, and philosophical impasse where one recognizes contradictions and cannot reach a clear conclusion, for that is contrary to the flesh or their previous beliefs. Aporia is this feeling. This is reflected through antithetic parallelism, which is shown in old Hebrew poetry, comparing wisdom and folly. The first half is chaotic, sorrowful, pitiful, the view of my humanity. The second half is clear, yet mirroring the first. The poem does not resolve the conflict, rather it accepts it. Flesh, human desire, the sins of man, the world as it is, etc., is inevitably imperfect. And by no means is this imperfection acceptable, yet we must live with it, for death is a foolish option, no? To show love for the world versus to show love for what is righteous. In this poem, nature mirrors the self in what is contrary to it. It explores lust for the world, superficiality, sloth, greed, lust for humanity's embrace, yet it rejects that, and accepts that, yet rejects that. My confusion is why I wrote this. No, cursed be not my soul. And this is what that poem explores, Aporia. So now I'll actually begin the poem and stop boring you with my chatter. Yes. Wow, really tough crowd. Thank you for your very forced laughter. Especially you, Akshay, right there. Anyway. So, I'll begin the poem now. Brief, fleeting moments, drowning in the sea of sound. Joy meets the cuckoo. I wallow in it, the temptation of despair, worldly desire. To love itself, one to love the fleeting flesh in fevered passion. The clouding of heart, blindness that can't distinguish affection from lust. One deafened by it, the quiet clinking of my chains, born from my pride. These boiling waves planting seeds that yield sorrow, pride, and misery. The sorrow of flesh, human curiosity, beauty, shallowness. They actually put it up there. Sorry. Has hate purpose? We are but our surroundings, so why must I hate? Fleeting butterflies, wandering whispers in the wind, the hollow I am. Gentle breeze through the pine, moments of serenity, these waves calm and slow. I wallow in it, the temptation of repair, yearning for my soul. To love itself, to move past the cold fire, but yet I desire. The clearing of the heart, sundering soul from my flesh, but yet I desire. Awakened by it, the breaking of my, quote, chains, born from my pride, drowning in the waves, planting seeds that yield sorrow. I am what I am. Great pity I find, human curiosity, it is intrinsic. Do I have purpose? We are what we think we are, my most grievous fault. I think I am correct, yet I still think I am wrong. The soul I must live. Oh, and by the way, if you want to submit poetry like this, please submit this Land of Light. I would like to see more of this and, just more writing in general. Anyway, thank you.
All right, thank Thank you, Nathan. He's smarter than I am. That's what I learned last year. Okay, so like I said, last year we asked you guys on that Google form what type of writers you would like to see at Writers Expo. And the most common response was screenwriter, which was super cool and frankly really difficult to actually find. And then I'm still trying to figure out how the stars aligned in this way, but we not only found a screenwriter to come to LHS, but it turns out he's worked on some material that students in the building have read as a part of their education. So let me introduce him, and then I'll let you know how the format's gonna work for the period. Our guest today won the Drama and Latitude Screenwriting Award at the 2010 Austin Film Festival. He then earned a prestigious Nickel Fellowship for Screenwriting from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. 16 years later, he has 5 feature films to his name, including an adaptation of the memoir Just Mercy and a piece of the Marvel Universe, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. In that span of time, he's been nominated for a Hugo Award, a Bradbury Award, and an Image Award from the NAACP. Please welcome, all the way from California, Andrew Lanham. And by the way, if you're ever in my shoes and you have a guest that you're introducing to your school, you're supposed to ask them how to pronounce their last name before you actually say it. Okay, good. Because I saw a video where they said Lanham, and I was like, uh-oh.
No, it's Lanham.
Perfect.
But when I was in high school, everyone always said Lanham, so I'd be used to it. I'm very big
I like
up
that
there.
it sounds British too, that's great. For anyone who might not know, can you just explain in your words what a screenwriter is?
Yeah, a screenwriter is the person who writes the script for the movie that you watch, whether or not that's on television or a feature film or a short film. Often you'll have writer-directors. Both of these movies up here I wrote with a close friend named Destin Daniel Cretton, who then went on to direct both of the films. So you can have a writer-director who would most likely call himself a director, not a screenwriter, even though he might also be a screenwriter. But a working screenwriter, such as myself, is writing the script that will then hopefully inspire 200 to 300 people to all bring a multitude of other things to realize the movie.
So as you can see, we're going to do a little bit of like an interview style thing today. We've got a little bit of an interactive nature to this, and certainly your questions are going to be part of it. So I'll pause periodically to take questions. Just make sure when I do that you raise your hand really high, or else I will not be able to spot you, okay? I hear from a lot of students, I want to be an engineer, I don't ever hear, I want to be a screenwriter. How did you get into that?
I always loved movies. I was a very big movie obsessive as a kid. I always watched everything. I always went to the movie theater. I was just kind of consuming movies all the time. I was also always a really big reader from a really early age. So I think writing was probably always somewhat in my path. When I was in high school, I did a lot of musical theater, and I felt like I wanted to be an actor, not a writer. I went to college in London. I lived there for 4 years, and at some point after college, I decided I wanted to pursue screenwriting, so I moved home and got a job, and I spent a year just writing one script to try to apply to graduate school. And I was lucky enough to find a mentor, which in any writing field, if you're lucky enough to have someone older who has some sort of an experience take an interest in you or see something in you, I really recommend kind of grabbing hold of that and taking advantage of it. Through his feedback, I was able to write a script that got me waitlisted at graduate school. I then wrote to the graduate school. I went to the University of Texas, Austin. I told them I was moving to Texas anyway, and I would just apply again the next year if they didn't let me in. I got to Texas, and I believe they found out I was there, and then they let me in. And I've been screenwriting ever since.
So bold persistence does pay off from time to time.
Bold persistence pays off over a long period of time, yeah.
What does a day in the life of a screenwriter even look like?
It depends. My average day is pretty much spent by myself in my office, in my house, writing. I have 2 kids now, so we get up in the morning. My wife does breakfast. I try to get into the office as quickly as possible. Not because I don't love being around my kids, but I think I'm really big on process and how do you find inspiration and how do you kind of create a space for yourself day in and day out to kind of hypnotize your mind into being into a space where the work feels easy and not hard. So I kind of try to create that space for myself, and then I get into the office, I lock my phone in a black box that has a timer that doesn't open up for 4 hours. I have the internet locked from myself because I just know that those things will ultimately lead to a distraction that will kind of take me out of the flow of whatever I'm trying to do. And then I'll write all day. When I was younger, you can't really tell anymore, but I had really severe Tourette syndrome as a kid, and I still have quite bad OCD. So before I had kids, I wrote exclusively in coffee shops. And in those situations, the internet would already be locked from me, or I just wouldn't turn the internet on. And I liked having the busyness of the people around me. It actually helped me focus. But it would be the same thing. I would just try to create the environment for myself in which to produce, in which to feel creative in my everyday life, and to kind of trick your brain into, as easily as possible, getting into like the stream of the creativity you need to access, because the world is just so insane at all times that it's so easy to get just ripped out of that. And then every time you're ripped out of it, you're a bit farther away from kind of the process of discovering what it is you want to say.
So if you need to use the internet for research, do you set aside a different time to do that then, I assume?
I set aside a different time. And the screenwriting process, I mean, it's different for every single project. So for something like Just Mercy, we worked very closely with Brian Stevenson, the lawyer who wrote the book that the movie is based on. He was a producer on it. We interviewed him. We went to Alabama and spent time with him. There was like a lot of research. A lot of that research is pretty much done at the front end. You might need to look up things along the way. But I think you do the research work I find really fun, but it's kind of front heavy. And so if I'm not quote unquote writing pages from wherever I am on a project, maybe I won't lock my phone that day because I know it's like a solid research day. But trying to do so much preparation, and I think it's the same like when I was in college and high school with even like a term paper. It's like trying to do enough work up front that when you actually go to produce the thing, it feels as effortless as possible, because it can so easily, even when you have years of experience, it can so easily feel like just a painful struggle.
Yeah, I'm looking at my AP seminar kids in the middle of researching for a paper now.
It feels like a painful struggle, I think, for everyone, which my wife is always reminding me, and I try to remind myself, is you can take comfort in that there's no one out there, like you talk to like Pulitzer Prize winning novelists, they're not saying it comes easy day in and day out.
What was interesting is we had 2 writers yesterday, and there was a theme for them where they said, if you're not having fun doing it, there's no point. Is that something you resonate with on some level, or does it feel like more of a battle, like you said?
I think that if you're having no fun doing it, there's no point. For me personally, I think part of it is also realizing that there's something beautiful in the struggle of it, and this like something that was a little bit harder to do, or something where you had to overcome something in order to get there, you feel a sense of accomplishment at the end of it. I think what's more important than the question of fun is that you know you're doing it. You find the reason that you're doing it for yourself, even if it's a high school paper, even if it's a job you got hired for. It's easier to do that when I just think up a movie that I'd like. I mean, we can get into the, like, you can write a script on spec, which means I thought it up myself, I'm gonna write it myself, and then I'm gonna try to sell it. And then I'm basically just doing it for myself. But most jobs for a working screenwriter, if you're lucky enough to get the work, somebody is hiring you. Somebody comes to you and they say, I have this book, Just Mercy. I think this director is good. I think you guys would be good to write it. And then you're doing it in the confines of what the people who hired you are looking for, just like you're doing it in the confines of what your teacher says you have to write for your class. But in all of those things, I think if you look hard enough, you can find something personal, or at least a reason at the end of the road that you're doing it for. And there's a huge sense of satisfaction in pulling that off. And hopefully the fun comes with it in that process. So I think the fun is very important, but finding some meaning in everything you do, especially like in the world today where it feels like people kind of actively try to not find meaning in like their everyday life. I think trying to find that meaning from an early age is kind of the path to that satisfaction and finding the fun.
Okay, let me ask you about this, because Andrew's very gracious and did a lot of work sending us a lot of visuals and material, and I was wondering about the image on the right particularly, because I always wonder, like, how do people feel about these, like, award shows, or I was assuming that this was from the fellowship ceremony, is that?
Yes.
Okay, so what was that whole experience like?
So when I was in graduate school, the second script I wrote was about a paramedic with Tourette's syndrome. So it was I'm not a paramedic, but it was essentially just taking all of the personal things that I had gone through and putting them into the narrative of a script. It's not a movie that ever got made, but it ended up winning me the Nickel Fellowship, which I think you can start applying to it once you're 18. It's easily the best way to break into the industry as a working screenwriter. I mean, the competition is steep. There's, I think, like 6,000 to 8,000 submissions a year from all over the world, and 10 people become semifinalists, and then 5 people end up winning, and you get a fellowship that lasts throughout the year. They fly you to Los Angeles. But the biggest thing is that agents and managers reach out to you directly and want to represent you because you've won the Nickel. So that's Destin Cretton. We won the Nickel Fellowship at the same year. He ended up going on to make his Nickel script, which was called Short Term 12, which is about, I think it's on Netflix. It's about a bunch of young kids in a group home. It's a really deeply beautiful movie. And yeah, then we had to give a little speech at the Beverly Hilton, I believe, and they put the big statue up behind us.
Very cool. Let's jump in a little bit. So I think the next one might be okay. Let's just do this quick. So we have a clip from Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings, and what we're gonna try and do is put the script that Andrew wrote side by side so that you can see the script while the clip is playing. Enjoy.
Who are you?
You got this, bro. My bad. Sorry. What
the hell's going on?
You really want to talk about this now? Bus driver is down. I'm not gonna handle this. Every time I've tried to drive a bus, I get yelled at.
Go, you freak!
The back is about to go. On my signal, make a hard right.
What signal?
And that is why you need an AV team, by the way. Can you explain just a little bit about when we look at a script, what it is we're looking at?
Yeah, for sure. Can we bring the script? Is it possible to bring the script back up? Came straight from Marvel, which is why it's called a watermark. It's why my name is plastered across the front of it. Every script is different. In general, a page of a screenplay has a lot more white space, obviously, than any other thing you might read. And you are attempting to only show exactly what you are seeing or hearing in the film. So a traditional screenplay page is never going to tell you how a character is feeling directly. It's never going to give you information that you can't see in the scene that you are going to be watching. It's never going to explain other things outside of the character. You have to get all of that into the page. A professor once told me the whole goal of screenwriting is to externalize the internal. So if you're writing a short story or a book, you're really dealing with the internal. And even a play, it's so dialogue based, there's much more opportunity to discuss the internal. But a screenplay, you're trying to take all of those internal feelings and get them into a scene where other people are going to be able to be inspired by them and turn them into a script. With something like Shang-Chi, it's the process of writing and then making a Marvel movie has a lot more people involved than even your regular Hollywood feature-length film. I came in to help Destin and the other writer who I became friends with through the process, Dave Callahan. The three of us wrote the script together. I came on only 6 months or so before the movie started shooting. And so it was a really interesting process because at that point, they had started to build the sets for the set pieces. So they knew that there was a bus fight, and they knew that it was probably around 20 minutes into the movie, but they had a script that wasn't quite working that then we were going to continue to revise and work on together. So as the entire cast and crew are prepping the film, we were writing at the same time. And then you also have what's called previs, where all of these computer effects artists are making animated versions of the set piece that you're designing at the same time. So Destin would be giving them notes on what he liked or didn't like. We would get to watch it as it's put up on the screen. At the same time, he and I are working with Dave kind of round the clock, designing the beats of it. And then the end result is the scene that you saw, but also the script pages that are hopefully matching as close as possible. to what you're seeing. If you're interested in screenwriting and you go to read a lot of scripts, I'd really recommend reading a lot of different types of scripts. If you read a lot of the bigger action movies, often the action won't correspond quite as directly. There's concrete rules for how to write a screenplay, but also everyone is kind of breaking those rules all the time.
What was it like emotionally when you found out I'm working on a Marvel project? Like I would imagine there's excitement, but also pressure.
Yeah, it was exciting. There was pressure. It was a very fast process for me. I talked to Destin on a Tuesday and I flew to Australia on a Saturday. And when I got there, they were already working. I went across town and met with Dave Callahan, the other writer who wasn't able to go to Australia. It's such a fast-moving machine. A lot of jobs, like something like Just Mercy, you're working on it for a number of years, and then you're getting it up on its feet, and by the time it goes into production, your job is essentially, as the screenwriter, is done unless there's a problem. The superhero movies are on tight schedules with huge teams of people, and they're never done. They're just constantly working on them. It's just incredible what they do. But there was a sense of pressure, but there wasn't any time to think about it. It was pretty much nonstop work from the second I landed.
That makes sense. We have about 15 minutes, so I want to start giving you guys the opportunities for questions. Again, if you have something you want to throw at Andrew, just make sure your hand's high. Yeah, go ahead.
When writing for Shang-Chi, how much do you guys have to relate, how much do you guys have to read back to the comics in order to get like that kind of like comic accuracy for the movie? And also, how much do you have in control for like what was going to be happening later down the line, like films such as like Doomsday, if you had to like add things in there to set up for that film?
I read as many of the comics as I could. Marvel's really incredible, and I feel like you can tell when you watch their movies, they have, the people there really love the Marvel comics, and so if they're deciding to make like an original, like an origin, like a Shang-Chi, they've already put so much thought into the lore and the details and how they're going to, the specifics of that. So they give you all of the comics, and then you're kind of just in this sandbox where you more and more grow to understand the world. You're also surrounded by a team of people where if you say, oh, we should do this, there's someone there to say, you can't do this, and this is why, because of the nature of the comics. But with any adaptation, I think it's the same for something like Just Mercy. I think you kind of have to have like a tuning fork in your head where you can think of how far you can bend something before it breaks and it no longer resembles the thing that it's meant to be. And with Marvel, it's a bit easier because you have a team of people surrounding you where you're all kind of on the same page with that. What was the second half of the question?
Also, like...
Oh, the planning ahead.
Yeah.
I think that it depends on where, I think that the planning ahead, I think that the biggest priority for every Marvel movie for the team there is that they're going to make a great movie. Less is it going, how perfectly will it lead into the next thing? Like if we make a great quality film that people like, it will lead the way towards what happens next. They do obviously always have like their global plan of everything that they're planning. With something like Shang-Chi, we were very close to the beginning of the phase. I can't remember which, it's like phase 3, phase 4. Right, so when you're at the beginning of the phase, and also we were a first movie that doesn't have a lot of, I think with Shang-Chi it was really fun where there's connections to the other films, but they're fairly light, or Ben Kingsley's character is obviously from Iron Man 3, and so those are really kind of fun, original ideas, but that particular movie didn't have to worry too much about the future, beyond the tag scenes, which they're kind of figuring out as they go and as they're planning everything that comes next.
Yeah, go for it.
As a screenwriter, when you're writing these, you make sense? Tailoring your writing to the actors you want to hire or have already hired? Or do you find yourself tailoring the casting to the writing you already have?
For an original script, for me, myself, and I would highly suggest for anyone starting, just try to write from your heart and something that really speaks to you. When I'm writing, I don't really ever picture an actor at all. I don't have a dream of becoming, I really love writing and I love the process of writing. You'll meet some writers who say they hate writing, or some screenwriters. And you'll meet a lot of screenwriters who are also directors where the writing is like the most brutal part for them because they're just trying to get a blueprint. I don't like, Paul Thomas Anderson will probably win Best Director this weekend, and if you read his scripts, there's hardly any information on the lack of information on the page is kind of shocking. But that's because he's seeing the entire thing in his head. For me personally, especially when I'm writing something original, I'm trying to just sort of feel it and know that I'm connected with the characters and that I'm feeling the emotion of what they're going through as I'm in the process of writing it. If I was planning on directing it, I'm sure the calculus of that would change, especially if you have some success. Like, guaranteed, someone like a Quentin Tarantino is literally like, I'm writing this movie for this one person and no one else can play it, and that's who I see in my head. But I love the process of writing the screenplay, and I think one of the big things I get out of it is just the process of connecting with those characters. And it would almost obscure that if I was thinking like maybe someday Jennifer Lawrence might read the script. Also, you're kind of, it's a tough industry and you're sort of setting yourself up even for more, because even in success, it's not going to look like what you thought it's going to look like because so many other people are going to be involved. It's like a roundabout answer.
I think there's a hand maybe on the aisle over there.
So how do you guys decide how much funding to allocate for a movie? Is it pitch it to investors, or is the company you're making it with
So I have no say whatsoever in the money that gets allocated, like beyond trying to get the job that will pay me. In order to get a job, my agents or my manager will say, this job is available. We think you might be a good fit for it. I start meeting with the producer or the studio or the director or any combination of people who are already on the project. Probably 6 other people, if I'm lucky, will also be having those same conversations. If the conversations go well initially, if I'm lucky, that will get narrowed down to 3 people. Sometimes I'm doing an animated film for DreamWorks right now, and it was like a much smoother process. Sometimes it happens much faster. I will then have to figure out the entire movie, and I will then pitch the movie in around 20 minutes to the people with the money, and then they will pick one of the 3 people who pitched. And then I'll get paid for a few drafts of a project in stages along the way.
Can you tell us anything about that movie or no?
I think it will be cool, and it has talking animals.
Okay, fair enough.
I think animation is really, really interesting right now, and if you're interested in screenwriting, I think like animation is this really cool, like things like the Spider-Verse and K-pop, like these are really, really cool movies, and it's like, I think that there's really exciting stuff like happening in animation right now.
Yes, Harper, go for it.
Is there a movie ever made in history that you wish you could be a part of writing?
I mean, yeah, I really love, I've always been a movie obsessive. So like my favorite movie is Magnolia by Paul Thomas Anderson, any of the Coen brothers movies. I think I noticed for a few years I was so busy on for hire work that I wasn't writing scripts for myself that I was trying to sell. And my wife noticed a trend where I'd watch, just some thriller and I'd say, well, I could have written that, but I wasn't writing it. I as opposed to asking myself what I wished I could have written or what I could have done, trying to live in the moment with anything you're going to create, to ask yourself, like, what are you going to create next? And, or what are you going to start creating, and just like start doing it, start the process of getting through it. I think a first draft for everyone is usually bad, but can be very good and personal and true to you. So approaching a first draft of anything as if it's a document to teach you what the questions are that you're trying to ask, as opposed to, oh, I wrote it once and that's the answer and it's done. But I certainly have like my favorite movies and my favorite directors, like the Coen brothers and Anderson, but I think that they're producing like genius level work. And they're also often the writer-directors who are kind of doing the entire thing.
I think there was someone from Mrs. LeMaistre's class. Is that right or no? Yeah, go for it.
Are you a fan of any films by Stanley Kubrick?
Yes, I like all of them.
Isaac.
When you were working with Marvel, did you get any insider info on movies that haven't came out yet?
When I was working with Marvel, I knew all the secrets, but I'm not allowed to talk about any of them.
Yeah, way back.
Not all of them, but some of them.
When you're working on something original, what is like your process for plotting everything out from like just coming up with the idea and the way through?
Yeah, that's a great question. 99% of all movies, especially the ones made in the Hollywood system, have a 3-act structure, and where the first act of the movie is half an hour, the second act of the movie is around an hour, and the third act of the movie is around 30 minutes. Almost all of them have what's called an inciting incident that happens somewhere between minute 7 and minute 15. Almost all of them have a big turn that happens at the end of the first act that throws you into the second act, and almost all of them have a low point at the end of Act 2, 30 minutes before the end of the movie, where all hope seems lost and the characters come up with some sort of a plan. So a big part at the beginning is just trying to find the things that speak to me and that I'm responding to, and like, I think a thing you can't really sort of define in terms of where creativity is coming from. There's a great book by David Lynch called Catching the Big Fish that's all about creativity, and he says it's like fishing, and you're trying to just dip lures down into the ocean to get as many little pieces as you can in order to create a story. But once you feel like you have that story, I mean, when I started writing, I just started writing. Like, if you feel like you have it, you might as well start, because it gives you something to revise. But there's also the actual screenwriting books will teach you the nuts and bolts. There is a great video essay by Michael Arndt, who wrote Little Miss Sunshine and one of the Toy Story movies, about Hollywood structure, where he breaks down the whole thing to Star Wars. You can easily find it online. I've watched it like 100 times. If I'm stuck on a script, I'll like watch it again and look at the diagrams because it's so perfect. There's also a great podcast episode by the podcast Script Notes, where Craig Mazin, who does The Last of Us, breaks down structure, writing to theme using Finding Nemo. I highly recommend any of those things if you're interested in doing it. But yeah, it's finding the pieces that are inspiring to you, and then working out how to get it into the structure.
We have about a minute and a half. Yeah, on the aisle.
If you could have worked on any MCU project, which would it be?
The one I worked on.
Yeah, right up front.
How would you say AI has impacted your job, or like if it hasn't, could you see it impacting it in the future?
Yeah, I think that Hollywood is probably in a similar place to the rest of the world, where everyone seems to understand that it's fundamentally going to change everything, but nobody is quite sure exactly how it is going to. I'm sure I know that like the Writers Guild does new contracts every few years, so they got AI guardrails in place last time, so that a script like has to be written by a human. It can't be fundamentally written by AI. I think, like with anything, AI can theoretically be a useful tool, especially for research or getting notes on something. I also think it's inherently not creative because it's taught on patterns, and it's like, so I kind of would recommend teaching yourself the nuts and bolts of something before using a thing that's going to sand off the ability to spontaneously create. But yeah, it's definitely gonna make changes in the industry.
We only have 10 seconds left. So round of applause for Andrew Lanham.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.